What flooring to go for? A natural wood or man-made laminate or LVT? Well, my name is Alex from Easy Floor Store, and I'll just try to give you some of my thoughts on what flooring to choose, factoring the pros and cons of various types. So typically when we have a visitor in our showroom, often when there is no clear understanding what flooring to go for, we'll try to establish what are the priorities. Of course, it's easier, much easier to deal with someone who knows exactly, well, I want, let's say, wood or this laminate in that color, blah blah blah, but it's not always the case. So, and therefore we'll try to understand what are the key priorities. There are often people who really want to go for wood, but then if to take the reality on board, and we learn that there are, let's say, maybe a few pets at home, little children, etc., that may be good option, but if that type of person would want a little bit easier life when it comes to maintenance, we try to navigate them maybe towards to consider good quality man-made flooring, whether it's laminate or LVT. So I would say definitely when you're trying to choose a floor, it's important to understand what would be your kind of key priorities, what you would like to achieve and what you would like to avoid. So I would say if you're really a huge wood lover and nothing goes but wood, then no point to look into anything but wood. Having said that, you could still have a choice what type of wood to choose in terms of how it's finished, how it's looked, etc. Because, for example, if we, let's say, take oak for that matter, traditional oak, just no staining, just real oak, and so you can have it either lacquered or oiled. It could be smooth or brushed and distressed, and if to compare those types of finishes of just a standard oak, obviously the brushed or distressed lacquered scenario would be perhaps much more practical and more like easier maintenance than if to compare smooth oiled finish, where on a smooth surface you'll see a lot of what's going on the floor, whether if it's dirty you'll see it more, as opposed to the same level of dirtiness but on the brushed or distressed lacquered finish, because all those imperfections try to help to hide a lot of those sort of issues, and also therefore to consider whether oiled or lacquered. So the key difference between the two types of finishes. So lacquer is something that sits on the top of wood and creates a physical barrier. So this barrier could be like 0.1 millimeter or so, but it's actual barrier between the actual wood and the environment. So in this instance, in fact, when you touch wood, you don't touch actual wood, you touch lacquer. And in most cases, it would be polyurethane or polycarbonate lacquer. If it's high quality one, it would be like 2 or even 3 component part. And if it's a factory finished, it would be quite a few layers of lacquer, like 5 or 7, with a UV curing system, which makes it much more durable and chemically resistant. With the oils, on the other hand, so the key difference in principle how it protects the wood. So when you apply oil, it actually penetrates inside of the wood and make the top layer, top surface of the wood repellent of whatever. Typically, definitely water or water-based types of stuff, as well as could be contain properties of oil repellency. So in this case, when you actually touch wood, you actually touch wood rather than something else. And when it comes to, let's say, practical aspect, and something is spilled or dropped on the floor, so the, let's say, imagine it's just water to make things simple. So water is spilled on the wood, and then oiled finish oiled finish wood would just repel it and try to kind of to prevent it from penetrating, soaking in inside. Whereas on a lacquered surface, where water is spilled, so it would be sitting on the lacquer, and it would be no even attempt, at least within certain time frame, to penetrate to penetrate into the wood itself. So if to compare the two with well, if water, let's say, dropped off, spilled on the surface, and if it's enough water and it sits there forever, it still may find a way, even through the lacquer, to get in, or at least it would find a way to penetrate into the lacquer. And with the oiled finish, obviously it will try to find its way through the oil structure and will penetrate into the wood and could leave a mark. It's still, we're talking about the open window, how much of a time you have before you remove the mark, before it does some sort of permanent mark. And typically with the lacquer finish, it would be, that window would be much longer, particularly if it's a high quality. Well, let's assume that we're talking about high quality lacquers and oiled finishes. So typically on a lacquered, it will give you a much longer open time, and in general it would be much more practical scenario for you. So if you're looking for definitely wooden finish, but want to have more like practical surface, then I would say definitely lacquered. But not only that, you want the wood finish like a brushed finish, so it has some grain and texture, so it helps to break up the surface and focal points and make it bring less attention on any problematic areas, like temporary problematic areas like dirt, for example. But you even can go with the next step, make like distress, hand scraped finishes, which kind of bring up more character and therefore take away focus from any of those temporary imperfections, or even permanent imperfections like superficial scratches, etc., which definitely will be appearing on your wood sooner or later. Okay, but the oiled finish comes into play where your practicality is not your concern, and you really as natural as possible feel and look. In this case, definitely the oiled finish will be much more, gives you much more natural appearance, vibrancy of the colors, tactile sensations. When you touch the wood, you actually feel the wood, particularly also if you walk with a bare feet. And then that's about wood. And then man-made. So in general, for hard flooring, there are two types. Most popular perhaps is laminate, and another very popular option is LVT. So laminate is obviously popular because the potential entry level much low. You can, I think, now find laminates out there at from £6 or £7 per square meter. Well, and then obviously with the higher quality scenarios, it gives you options at even £40 or £50 per square meter. But it's really a really good laminate. And LVTs, again, it's probably entry point would be a little bit lower, but for a reason. And the upper limit probably would be similar with a high quality laminate. So typically, what I would say would start with maybe for the click vinyl at least, from £20 per square meter up to around about 40 or 50. With the glue down vinyls, it probably would be from, I don't know, 15 pounds per meter or so, but then you would have to factor in the cost of the installation and adhesives, etc. Obviously with the click vinyl, there is no need for that. So, and in here, so if to try to decide when would you want to go for the man-made flooring, from maybe not from cost perspective. If it's cost perspective, if it's like you need to have something just basic, cheap, maybe for as a temporary measure, then perhaps laminate would be the answer. If it would be more like a longer term, decent quality, and you're just considering what to go for from other considerations, like whether it's practicality, warmness, sometimes the color is a very important factor. Often people come over, want wood, but they also have a specific color in mind, and then just as they find this color only, let's say in laminate or LVT, they often, for that reason only, switch for the product in this color, because sometimes it's they spend 6 months choosing specific furniture or kitchen, and then they want specific color for the flooring, and this comes only in, let's say, in laminate. So that also could be a priority. If you're really color design orientated, then in this case maybe important to find that color first and then see what is made of. And if it's LVT, well, okay. If it's wood, then fair enough. So that's a consideration. But let's say if to compare those man-made flooring and when to go for them, so it's definitely where practicality is more important on your priority list than the aesthetics. Having said that, also aesthetics nowadays, with particularly higher quality laminates and LVTs, is really kind of next level to where it was, say, 5 years ago. There are so many finishes nowadays. When people look at them in our showroom, they cannot really always immediately tell whether it's real wood or not. So aesthetical part definitely getting there. Yes, it's not going to be a natural product. It would be an imitation, but certainly practicality of the surface would be far more advanced. So, and often people who have children or pets, often the LVT flooring or laminate would be much, perhaps, more sensible option for them. And if something like one of those spot accidents would happen, it would be less panic. Well, what should I do? What should I do? Because typically, with the higher quality man-made products, whether it's laminate or LVT, the chemical resistance of the top layer would be far better. And out of obviously with quality ranges heavily with all man-made products. There are unfortunately quite a few cheap low-cost products which often presented as a very expensive products, etc. Like, for example, I remember we came across a product which was like 12mm laminate, which you think, whoa, it's a very thick, nice laminate, but it was very basic, very soft, like AC2 product or thereabout, so it wouldn't last extremely long time. Whereas there are 8mm laminates with coming from European factories, AC4 level of durability, and then with water resistance aspect. With laminates, by the way, a lot of new products, they tend to become now water resistant. Not all of them, so that's definitely important to watch out, particularly if you're considering options to go into your kitchens and even more in the bathroom. Even touching up on laminates, well, I would, when it comes to kitchen is fine for water resistant laminate, but when it comes to the bathroom, it's also fine. But if you have a choice, I would rather to suggest that LVT is a much better option because it's waterproof. It's not just water resistant, that potentially still could have could be affected by moisture, but LVT is typically waterproof. So even if it's going to be huge spillage of water or kind of this minor flood, you drop a bucket of water or so, it would be fine with this. Whereas with laminate, in this case, it may still suffer because if moisture gets typically under the product, it could get absorbed into the base structure of the laminate flooring. So, but with laminates, there are definitely some advantages as well as disadvantages, which obviously often opposite on LVT flooring. So typically from good quality laminate, you would expect probably thickness 8mm plus, probably 10 or 12 even better, and also the width and length of the planks also a factor. It's more like maybe now design trend to go for wider and longer planks rather than technical factor, but wider and longer planks could potentially be used in the areas where your subfloor is not necessarily perfect, because the size, larger size planks could kind of offset those unevenness a little bit. Yes, it could be bouncy slightly, but it could still technically perform there, because also it would be less planks used, less logs, because again of the width and length on the same amount of surface, and therefore technically would perform a little bit better. If your subfloor is perfect, it's like brand new, flat, firm, out of both laminate or vinyl, LVT, I would probably go for LVT, because it's, to me, from my experience, it's like a new generation laminate. It does everything that laminates do, but it's 100% waterproof. There is a pre-attached underlay typically, which would make life of the person who installing it, whether it's you doing it yourself or a professional doing it, much easier, therefore could be more cost effective and faster to install it. Plus also you know that moisture is never going to be an issue, and decent LVTs nowadays, as well as laminate for that matter, get a lifetime warranty, certainly for residential settings. For commercial, no, because obviously commercial it's harder to gauge this, what's going to happen there, how heavy the traffic would be, so etc. etc. So out of the two, factoring that the substrate is good, LVT I would say would be my choice of preference. But if the substrate is not perfect and you trying to minimize those effects or offset those imperfect substrate with the underlay, then maybe laminate would be a particular 10mm plus laminate in terms of thickness would be a better option. Also, I would say that LVT specifically, it could be a more interesting option when it comes to working with underfloor heating, because LVT is a much thinner construction of the product, and it's typically composite material. So for both of those reasons, the efficiency of the heat transfer would be much better with laminate, because it's also wooden substructure as well as wood. So there again, heat not gonna, let's say you activated your underfloor heating and you want the room to warm up as soon as possible. So on the wood or laminate, which are tend to be thicker materials, and it's of wood, and wood is not the best conductor, not as good conductor of heat as the LVT. It's still gonna get there, but it may take a little bit longer. So from that point of view, LVT together with the underfloor heating probably would work in a little bit better way. With some LVTs, however, particularly glue down, there are some consideration to be made what glue to be used, because you need to make sure it kind of complies with the technical heat ranges. Typically, European standard, the maximum temperature of the subfloor should be not more than 27 to 28 degrees, which what output of the underfloor heating systems would be, but you have to just make sure and watch out for that. Otherwise, it could cause some debonding with the glue down vinyl, or some possible fluctuation, contraction, expansion with the click systems. But again, a lot of quality products, they quite stable and don't even require expansion gaps for big areas. So hopefully that would help you to kind of understand what hard flooring to go for when you specifically want kind of wooden look flooring, and whether to go for real wood or man-made flooring. Also, actually, just a quick comment that if you're really into herringbone type of flooring, both laminates and LVTs now have so many options for that type of pattern. So if you kind of like herringbone and think it's only available in wood, it is not. You can find a lot of options nowadays in both LVTs, click LVTs, glue down LVTs and laminates. So thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you on our new videos down the line.